Hello and welcome to the last week of our fall session of St. Anne Adult Small Groups. It's been a wonderful journey so far. Today we come to the end of the end. The last 3 weeks we've been focusing on this theme of the end, where it is that the Lord is calling us. What is He calling us to? What will it be like if we follow Him? Ultimately, we're each called to make a choice. To make a choice either to follow Jesus or not to follow Jesus, to allow him to be our king or not to be our king. And each of the gospel writers, as they tell the story of our Lord's trial, they kind of put him on trial again, or invite us as we meditate on that story in sacred scriptures, we meditate on those chapters of the gospels to kind of decide for ourselves as if we're the judge. Is this the one I'm going to follow, or am I going to follow someone else? There are various other characters that are put up alongside of Jesus: Pilate, Barabbas, Herod, Caiaphas the high priest, and even the crowd. Five other alternatives, five other ways to seek to shape and to influence the world. Five others that we could follow rather than following Jesus. So we're going to take some time today and look at them. St. John, in his gospel, focuses our attention on Pilate. This was the passage that we heard proclaimed this past Sunday. Jesus and Pilate are having this dialogue. Pilate, we know from history, was someone who was very heavy-handed in the way that he used the authority that he had been given. He was the governor. He had been made the governor of Judea by Caesar. And he wanted everyone to know that he had that power. He would at times crucify people that he knew were innocent just to be sure that everyone knew that he could, just to be sure that everyone knew that he had the power to do that. If there was someone who came along who seemed like they might possibly be a threat to the order that he was establishing there, he would do away with them. We see this aspect of Pilate's character represented in the gospel, especially in the dialogue between him and Jesus, as he makes sure that Jesus knows who has authority. He says to Jesus, when Jesus doesn't want to speak to him, when he doesn't want to answer his questions, he says, "Do you not know that I have the power to release you and I have the power to crucify you?" He wants Jesus to know about his power. Jesus, on the other hand, knows where real power, real authority comes from. He says, "You would have no power over me if it weren't given to you from on high." Jesus knows where his own authority comes from. It doesn't come from himself. It doesn't come from his physical strength. It doesn't come from his wisdom or his intellect. It comes from God. So he respects that authority that comes from God. Matthew's account of the gospel and of the trial focuses our attention on Barabbas. And Barabbas appears in all four, but Matthew gives a little more attention to that decision. Which one is going to be released, Jesus or Barabbas? Jesus is the Son of God. Barabbas, the name, means the Son of the Father. It's a name that kind of historically very beautifully gives to someone who is the alternative to Jesus. Do we want to follow Jesus, the Son of God, or do we want to follow Barabbas, the Son of the Father? Which son do we want to follow? Barabbas, St. Matthew points out, is a murderer and a revolutionary. As a revolutionary, he's trying to bring about social change. He realizes that there are things going on that are unjust, that aren't the way that they're supposed to be. In particular, he's trying to get rid of Roman rule, as Rome was there very unjustly occupying Judea, excising taxes that they should not have needed to pay, should not have been forced to pay, ruling Judea in a very unwelcome way. Barabbas wants to change that. The change that he desires is probably good, but he's also a murderer. And in order to bring about that change, rather than changing hearts, he wants to just take lives, start a riot and a rebellion and a war. He's trying to bring about social change, but is willing to kill to make it happen. He wants a violent revolt. And so here is Jesus who also wants to bring about change. But Jesus wants to bring about change by allowing himself to be killed, whereas Barabbas, to bring about change, is willing to kill others. Jesus recognizes that real change begins inside of our own hearts before we make an effort to influence others. Barabbas wants to bring about change by compelling others, so that way he does not need to change. Very different, almost the complete opposite. They might look the same, seeking the same thing, or seeking something similar anyway, but very, very different in the way that they go about doing it. St. Luke focuses our attention on Herod, who is the king of Galilee. Herod is totally concerned with the show, with appearances. This is someone who says that he's wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to listen to Jesus. He doesn't want to be converted by Jesus. He just wants to know what the show, what the buzz is all about. Herod travels around with a large retinue with wealth and with people who travel with him, very concerned about the way that he appears, and is very much bent out of shape when Jesus doesn't want to answer his questions. He gets fed up with him and sends him back to Pilate because it doesn't fit into the perception of himself that he wants. Jesus, on the other hand, allows himself to be defaced, allows his face, his body to be bruised and bloodied, to be covered in mud. He doesn't even seek to wipe the blood away. It takes Veronica with her veil to do that. She's the only one concerned with Jesus' appearance. He is not. Jesus, on the other hand, Jesus continues to allow himself to be ridiculed and to be mocked. Not concerned with how he appears to others, only concerned with how he appears to his heavenly Father. I mentioned that John focuses a lot of attention on Pilate, as we heard in the Gospel. John also focuses attention on the high priest, Caiaphas. Caiaphas was, as the high priest, he's concerned with the holiness of Israel, making sure that Israel is following the commandments, making sure that the people are doing what God is calling them to do. He spends his life there in the temple and around the temple, going about fulfilling the rituals that are prescribed by God. In many ways, valiant, but he also kind of misses the point. And in one place, just before Jesus is arrested, when the Sanhedrin is gathered together to discuss whether or not they should apprehend Jesus and what they ought to do about him, Caiaphas says he counseled the Jews that it was better that one man should die rather than the people. It's better that one man should die rather than the people. He's willing to sacrifice someone that he knows to be innocent, and he believes inside himself, he believes to be innocent. It's better for him to kill one innocent person than for something bad to happen to the nation. And in particular, he knows that if Rome comes, they're going to destroy the temple. He wants to preserve that worship, but doesn't understand the point of it. He doesn't understand where the Lord is calling him. And so as Jesus stands there in front of him and he questions Jesus, and Jesus replies, one of the soldiers asks Jesus the question, "Is this the way you answer the high priest?" Kind of an ironic question, since Jesus himself is the real high priest, the one who is really able to unite us to God in heaven, the one who, unlike Caiaphas, who offers animals, who offers bread, who offers grain offerings, who offers things to God, Jesus will offer his very self. It's kind of the choice that's posed to us. Do we want to be those who will offer things to God, or do we want to offer our very selves? Finally, St. Mark focuses our attention on the crowd. We're invited to kind of put ourselves in Pilate's shoes and to ask ourselves, what decision would we make? Would we make the decision that Pilate makes, or would we make a different decision? Pilate, after questioning Jesus, is convinced that he's innocent, and there's no reason to put him to death. but the crowd keeps cheering that they want Jesus to be crucified. And so Pilate, St. Mark says, Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas to them, and after he had Jesus scourged, handed him over to be crucified. Rather than listening to Jesus, and rather than making a judgment based on righteousness, he follows the crowd. We too at times are invited to decide if we want to do what we know to be right and to listen to the voice of God, to listen to truth and justice, or to listen to the crowd and to go along with the crowd. These choices. Do we want to pursue heavy-handed authority? Do we want to pursue a right and good causes, but in an evil way? Do we want to be like Herod, who seeks only the show? Do we want to be like Caiaphas, who wants to give God things and not give his very self? Do we want to listen to the crowd, allowing our decisions to be based on popular opinion rather than on the voice of God? Or do we want to follow Jesus? Do we want to follow the one who lives the Beatitudes, the one who takes up his cross, who lays down his life, who knows that his authority comes from God, and who always lives according to God's law? That's the choice we have to make. But the beautiful thing is that Jesus has already told us what the right answer is. Jesus has already told us where we're going if we follow him. And we don't have to make that decision on our own. He's given us his Spirit to dwell within us. Jesus continually calls us to himself, and at those times when we slip up and fail, he calls us back to himself and gives us his forgiveness in the sacrament of reconciliation. And so even as we waver in our decision throughout our lives, he continues putting us back on the path that he has laid out for us. Let us choose Christ. Let us choose Christ.